we're going to talk about how to make the long tail cast on. This is the cast on I use probably most frequently. It's very serviceable, it's very flexible but sturdy. This is it on some single rib. That's the one side, which is quite a scalloped look. The other side is a bumpier look. Both are lovely, and you can decide which you prefer. What's interesting about this cast on, the reason it's so stable, is because it puts on a foundation row and that first stitch at the same time. And that is why it's going to provide more stability than, for example, a plain knitted cast on, which doesn't have that. So let's look at how to create this. First, I'm going to show you how to do it, and then we'll talk about how to place it, how to determine the length of the tail. It's called long tail for a reason, because you actually start somewhere up the strand of the thread. So if you like to start with a slip knot, we're just going to put it anywhere for now, just maybe 8 to 10 inches up the thread. Make your slip knot and place it on your needle. Pull on the ends to tighten. So I have taught kids, adults, many people over the years, and so I have a number of different mixed metaphors that I use for teaching this. When I was teaching kids, the way we started was that this is the cow's udder. We're going to milk the cow. We want the udder to go down. And what you do is you grab both threads in the palm of your hand. Close your fist around it. I like to put my index finger on the stitch for an anchor. Then you take your thumb and index finger and you put them through the center of those two threads. The rest of your hand continues to hold on here. And if you lower your needle parallel with your fingers, you get something that looks like a slingshot. This creates tension to help you work the cast on. The way the cast on works is basically a series of loops being passed through loops. You're going to come all the way as close to your body as you can, come under this thumb loop, go furthest away from your body, go behind this index loop, and scoop that thread through the hole you previously made. That creates a stitch. I'm going to take out my thumb and pass it back to the outer thread to tighten up. The reason why I called this an udder is because the kids like to yank on the udder to tighten. And I tried to convince them that that is not friendly to the cow, and it's also not the best for your cast on. So let me show you why. When you use your slingshot and you create the stitch, if you just pull down, it doesn't space your stitches very nicely, and you have to completely recalibrate your hand every time. To some degree, you will have to recalibrate in the beginning because you're getting used to this, but what I want to teach you is the foundation for how to get this very smooth and efficient. So the way that is that you put your fingers in, and everything about this should be efficient. I always say the needle travels like a train on a track. It picks something up, it comes out, it comes back, but it stays on its track. No big movements necessary. So everything is calculated. The index finger is holding the last stitch, and it's also spacing where the next stitch is going to lie, which is going to create a more flexible, less tight cast on, which is a good thing. You come under the thumb thread, scoop it, go all the way to the back of the index thread, scoop it through that loop, and when I take my thumb out, I just bring it right back to where it started, and I tighten by expanding my fingers. And notice that my index finger is still there, keeping a space. My hands are fairly wide right now, but as I get better at this, I'll be able to do this very rapidly. But the motion is out, back, scoop, back to the beginning. And see, my hand is already learning how to do that more efficiently. And I don't have to open my hand nearly as far. So one more time slowly. Space, under index, under thumb, behind index, scoop, thumb comes back out. 2 more little things. One is that, as I mentioned before, if you do not want to make a slip knot, you do not have to. You could start by grabbing your yarn. I think I just do this instinctively now. I get into the slingshot position before the needle is involved, and I just dive down in the middle and I make a twist. Do it again. And then I start my cast on that way. You can also simply, pass this and cross your threads. I like to keep the thumb, the shorter tail, over my thumb. That's what I like to do. So the best way to do it is to secure it with a twist like that. But this is completely optional. It's really up to you, whatever you prefer. The slip knot is absolutely fine. For measuring out a tail, so usually we say it's about 3 times the length of whatever it is you're making, plus a tail to leave at the end, 6, 8, 10 inches, whatever you want to leave. So for example, if I was doing a hat, what I might do is I measure out what I think would be a tail for weaving in later, put my fingers here, measure around my head. I'm going to use this skein of yarn to pretend to be my head. Let's say that's the circumference of my head from here to here. Then I simply try to double and then triple that length. So there's 1 length, 2 lengths, 3 lengths. And I would put my slip knot here at the end of the 3 lengths. So that's one way to do it. If you know the measurement, if you know the piece you're casting on is, for example, here was the front of a cardigan. And let's say we know this is supposed to be 12 inches, you could measure a tail, then measure 12 inches, create 3 times the length of 12, so 36 inches, and I always give a little bit extra, and then I put the slip knot there. And that way you should end up with enough that you won't ever have to undo your cast on. If you want to be more generous, you can, but everyone hates getting stuck in the middle of the cast on without enough thread. That has always worked for me, and I hope that it will work for you. So enjoy your long tail cast on.